Commander Ta stared at the endless dark of space through the viewport on Outpost Sigma 9. His fingers tapped against the cold metal console. 6 months alone at this remote station near the Cygnus Nebula had left him talking to himself more than he cared to admit. The silence broke with a sharp alarm. Ta jumped to his feet, scanning the readouts. Something was approaching fast. Too small for a ship, too controlled for debris. "Computer, identify incoming object," he ordered. "Unknown craft. Approximately 3 meters in length. Severe structural damage detected." Ta grabbed his emergency kit and rushed to the airlock. Through his helmet visor, he watched as the station's automated systems captured the small pod. It looked like an escape vessel, its hull scorched and breached in multiple places. "Life signs?" Ta asked, approaching cautiously. "One life form detected. Extremely faint vital signs." The pod's hatch was jammed. Ta used his plasma cutter to force it open, expecting to find a dying adult alien. Instead, he found something that made his breath catch. A small childlike creature lay inside, its blue-tinged skin barely pulsing with life. Its eyes were closed, body curled into a protective ball. It couldn't have been more than the equivalent of a human toddler. Ta lifted the small body carefully. "Computer, identify species." Species identified as Vexari. Warning: regulations prohibit direct contact with Vexari life forms. Protocol requires immediate containment and notification of Earth Command. Ta hesitated. The Vexari were reclusive, advanced aliens who rarely engage with humans. Most of what Earth knew about them came from distant observations and a handful of brief, tense encounters. The alien child stirred in his arms, its breathing growing more labored. "Computer, medical analysis. Subject experiencing acute cellular degradation. Estimated survival time without intervention, 3 hours." Ta made his decision in that moment. "Prepare medical bay for emergency treatment." Warning: this action violates Section 42 of the Non-Interference Protocol. Override. Authorization Ta Victor 0 to 97. In the medical bay, Ta worked frantically, using his background in xenobiology to adapt human medical technology to Vexari physiology. He created a makeshift life support system, monitoring every small change in the child's condition. Hours passed. The small alien stabilized, but remained unconscious. Ta studied the readouts, learning what he could about this mysterious species through the child's biology. 3 days later, the child opened its eyes. They were deep purple with flecks of silver, nothing like human eyes. It made a soft chirping sound that startled Ta. "Hello," Ta said softly. "You're safe now." The child stared at him, unmoving except for the slow blink of those strange eyes. Ta held out his hand, palm up. After a moment's hesitation, the child reached out with a 6-fingered hand and touched him. A strange sensation flooded Ta's mind. Not words, but feelings. Confusion, fear, and then, unexpectedly, curiosity. "I'm going to call you Q," Ta said. "I need to call you something," and that was my brother's name. In the following weeks, Ta documented everything. Q grew stronger daily, learning to walk around the station on unsteady legs. The empathic connection between them strengthened. Ta discovered Q could share simple emotions and images directly into his mind with touch. Ta taught Q human words, and Q taught Ta to understand his chirps and whistles. They developed a language unique to them. One night, as Ta was recording his daily log, Q climbed into his lap, placing a small hand on Ta's cheek. An image formed in Ta's mind. A burning ship, adults like Q running, screams, and then darkness. "Your family," Ta whispered. "I'm sorry." Q sent another feeling. Warmth, safety, and something Ta recognized as attachment. The child had imprinted on him. Ta knew he should report the child's existence to Earth Command. It was protocol. But each day made that choice harder. The reports from the border regions spoke of increasing tensions with the Vexari. What would happen to Q if Earth scientists got their hands on him? 2 months after finding Q, Tab received a scheduled transmission from Earth Command. Commander Tab, routine inspection will arrive at your station in 30 days. Prepare all logs and specimens for review. Ta looked at Q, who was attempting to stack nutrition packets into a tower on the floor. Acknowledged, he replied, his mind already racing with what this meant. That night, as Q slept in the small bed Tai had fashioned for him, Tai ran a complete medical scan. The results showed something troubling. Early signs of cellular degradation. Nothing immediate, but a clear pattern that would eventually become life-threatening. Tai sat in the dim light of his quarters, watching the small chest rise and fall. In just 2 months, this alien child had become the center of his universe. Every milestone, the first steps across the station floor, the first word-like sounds, the first time Q had sent an image of Ta with a feeling that could only be described as father, had filled a loneliness in him he hadn't acknowledged. "I won't let them take you," Ta whispered. "I won't let you die." The decision crystallized in his mind. He would leave everything behind. His career, his future, his species. Ta began calculating what they would need to survive, how to modify his scout ship for deep space travel, and where they might find help for Q's condition. In the silence of space, a bond had formed that defied regulations and transcended species. As Ta began preparing for their escape, he understood that nothing in his life had ever mattered more than the small blue child who had fallen from the stars. Commander Ta worked quickly in the dim light of Outpost Sigma 9. He had only 24 hours before the inspection ship arrived. His fingers moved across the control panel, systematically erasing any record of Q's existence from the station's main computer. Purge complete, the computer announced. Warning: this action violates data preservation protocols. Tai ignored the warning. He had broken far more serious rules already. He glanced at Q, who sat on the floor nearby, carefully examining a small holographic puzzle Ta had made for him. The communication panel chimed. Ta stiffened, then pressed the receive button. Admiral Wan's stern face appeared on screen. "Commander Tay, we've detected unusual power fluctuations from your station. Explain." Ta kept his expression neutral. "Minor calibration issues with the solar eraser. Nothing to worry about." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Our readings show you've been rerouting power to the medical bay for the past 2 months. Are you ill?" "Just some routine experiments, sir. The isolation gives me time for research." "What kind of research?" Before Tai could answer, Q wandered into view of the camera, making curious chirping sounds. The Admiral's eyes widened. "Commander Tay, what is that?" Ta felt ice in his veins. "Sir, I can explain." "Is that a Vexeri child?" The Admiral's voice rose. "Have you lost your mind? The Vexeri delegation is threatening war over what they call human aggression, and you have one of their children." "He was dying," Ta said firmly. "His escape pod crashed near the station." "This is a diplomatic catastrophe," the Admiral snapped. "I'm dispatching Special Operations immediate." Ta cut the transmission. "Q, we have to leave now," he said, scooping up the small alien. Q sent a wave of confusion and fear through their empathic connection. "It's okay," Ta soothed, gathering their emergency supplies. "We're going on an adventure to find your people." Tai rushed to the hangar bay where his small scout ship waited. He had spent weeks secretly modifying it. Enhanced life support, additional fuel cells, and a rudimentary cloaking system cobbled together from station parts. As they strapped in, the station's alert system blared. "Warning: unauthorized departure prohibited. Security lockdown initiating." Tay's fingers flew across the controls, inputting override codes. "Come on," he muttered. The hangar doors began to close. The scout ship lifted off, engines whining with strain as Todd pushed them beyond safe parameters. They slipped through the narrowing gap with inches to spare. As the ship accelerated away from the station, Tai watched 20 years of military service disappear behind him. His prestigious career, his reputation, his future, all abandoned for the small blue child strapped into the co-pilot's seat. 3 days later, deep in unpatrolled space, Tai ran a medical scan on Q. The results confirmed his fears. The cellular degradation was progressing. Without specialized knowledge of Vexari biology, Tai could only treat the symptoms, not the cause. "We'll find help," he promised Q, who was looking at him with those large, trusting purple eyes. Their first stop was a small trading outpost on the edge of human space. Tai kept Q hidden beneath a cloak as they moved through the crowded marketplace. He traded his military-grade navigation tools for supplies and information. "The Vexari," the trader named Jin whispered, eyes darting nervously. "They're beyond the Scarlet Divide. No human has crossed their borders and returned to tell about it." "I need to find them," Tai insisted. Jin leaned closer. "There's a scientific outpost in the Helix cluster, exiles and refugees. If anyone knows about alien biology, they will." 2 weeks later, they reached the Helix cluster. Their supplies were dwindling, and Q's condition had worsened. He slept most of the time now, his once vibrant blue skin taking on a grayish tinge. The scientific outpost was hidden within an asteroid field. As they approached, defense systems locked onto their ship. "Identify yourself," came a harsh voice over the comm. "My name is Ta. I have a sick Vexari child who needs medical help." Silence followed. Then, "Approach docking bay 3. Any aggressive action will result in immediate destruction." Inside the outpost, they were met by armed guards who escorted them to a medical facility. A woman with sharp eyes and gray-streaked hair examined Q. "I'm Dr. Yun," she said, running advanced scanners over Q's small form. "Where did you get a Vexari child?" Tai explained briefly about finding the escape pod. Dr. Yun shook her head. "The Vexari are an ancient species with complex biology. This child has a genetic condition common to their royal bloodline. I can stabilize him temporarily, but he needs treatment from his own kind." "Will you help us reach Vexari space?" Tai asked. "It's suicide," she replied. "But I'll enhance your ship's stealth capabilities. It might get you past their outer defenses." 3 days later, Tai and a slightly improved Q prepared to leave. Dr. Yun provided them with medication that would slow the progression of Q's condition. As they boarded their ship, alarms blared throughout the outpost. "Earth Command vessel approaching," announced the outpost's eye, demanding immediate surrender of Commander Tai and the alien specimen. Tai recognized the ship on the scanner. It belonged to Special Agent Jia, once his closest friend at the Academy. "Launch now," Dr. Yun ordered, sealing their airlock. "We'll delay them." As their ship slipped away from the outpost, Ta saw Q watching him. The child placed a 6-fingered hand on Ta's arm, sending a wave of gratitude and affection. "We'll find your people," Ta promised, "whatever it takes." Behind them, the Earth Command ship broke away from the outpost, beginning pursuit. Tai activated the new stealth systems and set course for the edge of known space, and the beginning of Vexari territory. The price of compassion had been high already, but as Tai looked at the small alien child beside him, he knew he would pay much more before their journey ended. The scout ship drifted silently through the asteroid field at the edge of the Scarlet Divide. Ta had shut down all non-essential systems to avoid detection. In the dim emergency lighting, he checked Q's vital signs again. The small alien was sleeping fitfully, his breathing shallow. "Just hold on a little longer," Ta whispered. Their escape from the scientific outpost had been narrow. Agent J's Earth Command vessel had pursued them relentlessly for 3 days before they managed to lose her in a dense nebula. The stealth modifications Dr. Yun had installed were effective, but using them drained their power reserves quickly. A soft alert from the navigation system broke the silence. They were approaching the Helios 6 mining colony, their last chance for supplies before entering the uncharted regions that would lead to Vexari space. Ta gently woke Q, We're going to stop for food and medicine. Remember what I taught you." Q nodded and pulled the hood of his cloak lower to hide his blue skin. He made a series of soft clicks that Ta had come to understand meant, "I'll be careful." Helios 6 was a rough place, a hodgepodge of mining platforms and habitation modules circling a mineral-rich asteroid. Ships of various origins crowded the docking bays. No one asked questions here, which was exactly what Ta needed. They moved through the crowded marketplace, Ta keeping Q close. He traded their last power cells for nutrient packs and medical supplies. At a shabby stall in the corner, a trader with cybernetic eyes examined Ta's Earth military compass with interest. "This is high quality," the trader said. "I'm Sun. What do you want for it?" "Information," Ta replied. "About the Vexari." Sun's artificial eyes wared as they focused. "That's dangerous knowledge. The Vexari guard their territory jealously. I need to find them." Sun leaned closer. "They're beyond the Scarlet Divide. No human has returned from their territory. But—" he paused, looking at the compass again. "There's a rumor of a neutral trading post at the edge of Vexari space. The coordinates will cost you more than this compass." Ta placed his military-grade navigation system on the counter. "Will this cover it?" Sun's eyes widened. "This is worth a small fortune. Are the Vexari hunting you, or are you hunting them?" "Neither," Ta said simply. Something in his tone made Sun study him more carefully. His gaze shifted briefly to Q, who was standing perfectly still beside Ta. "The coordinates are encrypted on this," Sun said, sliding a small data chip across the counter. "There's also a translation program for basic Vexari language. You'll need it." As they turned to leave, Sun called after them. "One more thing. The Vexari have been at war with themselves for generations. Two factions fighting over their future. Be careful which side you encounter first." Back on their ship, Tai studied the new information. The neutral trading post was a 3-week journey at their best speed. With their current power reserves, they'd barely make it. 5 days into their journey, Q's condition worsened dramatically. His temperature spiked, and the empathic images he shared with Ta became chaotic and frightening. Ta used the last of Dr. Yen's medication, but it barely helped. In desperation, Tai rigged a direct transfusion system from his own body to Q's, hoping his modified blood cells might stabilize the child. It seemed to help, but left Ta weakened and dizzy. "We'll make it," Ta promised as he stroked Q's forehead. The child sent back a weak feeling of trust that broke Ta's heart. Their ship's sensors suddenly blared a warning. A vessel was approaching fast. Earth command markings. "No, not now," Ta muttered, trying to power up their stealth systems. But they didn't have enough energy left. The communication panel lit up. "Scout vessel, this is Special Agent J of Earth Command. Power down and prepare to be boarded." Ta looked at Q, too sick to move, connected to him by the transfusion tubes. There was nowhere to run. "Vessel approaching from Vector 227, the computer announced. A second ship, much larger, appeared on their sensors. It didn't match any known configuration. The new ship positioned itself between them and the Earth Command vessel. "Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Command. Stand down immediately." There was no response. Instead, the mystery ship extended its docking arm toward Ta's scout vessel. With no other options, Ta allowed the connection. Armed figures in unfamiliar environmental suits boarded minutes later. They moved with precise efficiency, securing the small cabin. One approached Ta and Q, observing the transfusion setup. The figure removed its helmet, revealing a woman with silvery hair and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. "I am Captain Min of the Free Trader Horizon," she said in accented standard. "You have an unusual passenger." "He's dying," Ta said simply. "I need to reach the Vexari." Min studied the transfusion system. "You're giving your own blood to sustain a Vexari child. Interesting. The Earth ship is demanding we turn you over." "Please," Ta said. "Help us." Min made a quick hand gesture, and her crew began disconnecting the transfusion tubes carefully. "We'll take you aboard our ship. It has better medical facilities." As they were transferred to the horizon, Ty caught a glimpse of Agent J's face on a communication screen. Their eyes met briefly. To his surprise, her expression wasn't anger, but something closer to sadness. The Horizon's medical bay was far more advanced than Tay expected. Min's ship doctor, a quiet man named Du, examined Q with sophisticated equipment. "The child has the wasting sickness," Du explained. "It affects the Vexeri royal bloodlines. I can slow its progress, but only their central world healers can cure it." As Ty sat beside Q's treatment pod, Min returned. "The Earth command ship is still following us, but at a distance. Their agent has requested a private communication with you." On the secure channel, Agent J's face appeared. She looked tired. "You've gone too far, Ty," she said. "There's no coming back from this." "I know," he replied. Jay was silent for a moment. "I reviewed your logs from the outpost. I saw what you've done for that child." She looked away, then back. "The Vexeri have a small outpost at these coordinates. It's controlled by the progressive faction. You might find help there." "Why are you helping us?" Ty asked. "Because I remember who you used to be," she said softly. "A good man who always did the right thing, no matter the cost." The transmission ended. Ty looked down at Q, who was watching him with those large, trusting eyes. "We have a new destination," Ta told him. "We're going to find your people." The Horizon dropped out of lightspeed at the edge of Vexeri space. Captain Min's crew gathered on the bridge, tension visible in their movements. "This is as far as we go," Min told Ta. "The coordinates your Earth friend provided are here." She pointed to a small moon orbiting a gas giant. "Our sensors detect a settlement, but we can't confirm if it's the progressive faction." Ta nodded, looking at Q, who stood beside him, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The child was stronger after treatment in the Horizon's medical bay, but Du had warned the improvement was temporary. "The stealth systems on your scout ship are repaired," Min continued. "We've restocked your supplies and added some Vexeri language data to your computer. The rest is up to you." Ta gripped Min's arm in gratitude. "I won't forget this." "Just survive," she replied. Few humans have ventured this deep into Vexeri territory. As they prepared to depart, alarms suddenly blared throughout the horizon. "Vexeri patrol ships approaching," a crew member shouted. On the view screen, 3 sleek vessels appeared, their silver hulls reflecting the distant starlight. "They're scanning us," Min said grimly. "They've detected your scout ship in our bay." "We need to leave now," Ta decided, "before they identify Q." Min nodded. "Launch bay is ready. Go." The scout ship shot from the Horizon's launch bay as the first communication from the Vexeri patrol came through. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Stand down and prepare for inspection." Ta pushed the engines to full power, heading toward the coordinates Agent J had provided. Behind them, the Vexeri patrol ships broke formation, 2 continuing toward the horizon, 1 turning to pursue Ta's ship. "Computer, engage stealth systems," Tide ordered. "Warning: stealth systems ineffective against advanced Vexeri sensors at this range." The pursuing ship fired a warning shot that blazed past them. Q made a series of urgent clicking sounds and placed his hand on the console. Through their empathic connection, Ty felt Q's intention. "You know how to communicate with them?" Ty asked. Q nodded and began inputting a complex series of symbols into the communication system. The scout ship's computer translated them into an audio signal that pulsed through space toward the Vexeri vessel. The pursuing ship immediately slowed. A burst of similar sounds came back through their comm system. "What did you tell them?" Ty asked. Q sent an image through their connection. Himself as a young Vexeri of important lineage requesting safe passage. The Vexeri ship resumed pursuit, but didn't fire again. As they approached the moon, Tay realized their situation was precarious. The Vexeri ship wasn't attacking, but it wasn't leaving either. "We need to land," Ta told Q. "Can you send them another message?" Before Q could respond, two more ships rose from the moon's surface, smaller than the patrol vessel, but clearly armed. "Attention unidentified craft," came a voice in broken standard. "You enter Vexeri space without permission. Identify immediately." Q sent another message in Vexeri language. The response was immediate. Both ships from the moon positioned themselves between Ta's scout ship and the pursuing patrol vessel. "Follow light beacon to landing area," the voice instructed. "Any deviation will result in destruction." Ta carefully followed the glowing path projected before them. They landed in a small clearing surrounded by domed structures built into the rocky landscape of the moon. Armed Vexeri met them as they exited the ship. Their blue skin was similar to Q's but darker, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the dim light. They carried weapons Ta didn't recognize, curved rods that hummed with energy. When they saw Q, a ripple of sounds passed through the group. One stepped forward, towering over Ta. "Human brings Vexeri child," the alien said in broken standard. "Explain." Ta knelt beside Q. "I found him in a damaged escape pod. He was dying. I've cared for him, but he has a genetic condition I can't treat. I've come seeking help for him." Tai retrieved his datapad from the ship and displayed the detailed logs he'd kept since finding Q. Medical treatments, language lessons, their developing empathic bond, and his desperate journey to find help. As the Vexeri examined the logs, Q suddenly collapsed. Ta caught him before he hit the ground, feeling the child's skin burning with fever. "Please," Ta begged. "He needs treatment." Rai made a quick gesture, and two Vexeri lifted Q gently. "Follow. The child will receive care." Inside the main dome, Ta witnessed technology far beyond human understanding. Q was placed in a floating medical pod filled with silvery liquid. Screens displayed his cellular structure, highlighting the degrading patterns. "This child is Luminar lineage," a Vexeri healer named Juan told Ta. "Royal blood. We believe this line extinct after attacks from the dominant faction." "Can you cure him?" Ta asked. Juan's expression was unreadable. "Partially. The wasting sickness requires enzyme from central worlds. We cannot access." "The main Vexeri planets?" Ta asked. "Yes. Controlled by those who see humans as threat. They would kill you instantly." Ta watched Q floating in the healing pod, his small face peaceful for the first time in weeks. "Tell me what you need," Ta said firmly. "I'll find a way to get it." Ri and Juan exchanged looks. "Impossible," Rai said. "No human has infiltrated Central Worlds and survived." "I'm not leaving him," Ta insisted. "If there's even a chance, I'll take it." After a long silence, Juan spoke. "There is experimental technology. It temporarily alters appearance, cellular structure, makes one appear as Vexari. Extremely dangerous. When can we start?" Tai asked without hesitation. Rai studied Ta with new interest. You would risk death for child not of your species. He is my son, Ta said simply. Not by birth, but by choice. The alarm systems suddenly blared throughout the settlement. On a nearby screen, Ta saw multiple Vexari warships entering orbit around the moon. Dominant faction found us, Rai said grimly. They detected your ship. We have little time. Ta looked back at Q in the healing pod. Then we better hurry. Tay stared at his reflection in the polished metal surface. Blue-tinged skin stretched over a face that was no longer fully human. His eyes had grown larger, with silver flecks that caught the light. The transformation chamber had worked, altering his DNA and cellular structure to mimic Vexari physiology. The disguise will last 14 days, Juan explained, adjusting the final settings on the chamber. After that, the cellular degradation will become irreversible. Will it be enough time to reach the central worlds and return? Tai asked, his voice now carrying the slight
I'll be
musical
back
quality
with what you
of
need,
Vexari
Ta
speech.
promised.
If you
Placing
are not
his now
discovered,
six-fingered
Rai
hand
said against the
he
transparent
handed Tai
pod,
a small crystal
Stay
device.
strong. This contains
small
your
scout
identity
vessel had
information
been
modified with
You are
Vexari
now
technology,
a minor
its human
scientist
origins
from the outer
disguised.
colonies.
Ray's
Outside the
engineers had
settlement
programmed
dome,
a flight
the
path
situation
that would
had
allow
grown
Ta
dire.
to reach the central
The
worlds
dominant
by passing
factions
through a
warships
heavily
maintained
trafficked
orbit
trade
around
route,
the moon,
where his presence
occasionally
would attract
sending down
less smaller
attention.
craft that the progressive
Remember,
faction's
Rai
defenses
warned as
barely
Tai
held at
prepared
bay.
to depart.
Meanwhile,
Speak as little as
long-range
possible.
sensors had detected
Your
Earth
language
command
skills are
vessels
adequate,
approaching the
but
system.
not perfect.
Undoubtedly
And never
searching for
reveal
Ta
your
and
true
Q.
nature.
Before
dominant
leaving,
faction
Ta
believes
visited Q
humans are
trying
medical
to
bay.
infiltrate our society.
The child
to
was
destroy
stable
it from
but
within.
still unconscious.
3 days later,
floating in the
Tai's ship
silvery
joined a
healing
convoy
fluid.
of supply vessels heading toward the Vexari homeworld. He kept communications to a minimum, using the prepared responses Rai had taught him when necessary. The Vexari homeworld took his breath away. A massive blue-green planet orbited by rings of crystalline structures that glittered in the light of the system's twin suns. The central medical facility was located in a towering spire in the planet's northern hemisphere. Using his false identity, Ta gained access to the lower levels of the facility. Everything he had learned while raising Q, their mannerisms, their social cues, their technology, now helped him navigate this alien world without raising suspicion. In the research section, Ta located the specialized enzyme storage. The small vials glowed with an inner blue light, each one containing the cure for Q's condition. As he carefully placed 3 vials in his secure container, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security alert. Unidentified spacecraft entering orbit. Human vessels detected. Earth Command had arrived. Ta needed to leave immediately, but as he turned toward the exit, he found his path blocked by 3 Vexari security officers. Identity verification required, the lead officer demanded. Recent alert indicates possible human infiltration. Ta presented his crystal, keeping his eyes downcast as Rai had instructed. The officer scanned it, then looked at Ta more carefully. You are not registered for access to this section. What is your purpose here? Before Ta could answer, the facility shook with a distant explosion. The security net was being tested by the Earth Command ships above. In the moment of distraction, Ta pushed past the officers and ran. Alarms wailed as he raced through corridors, following the mental map Rai had helped him memorize. Security forces converged from multiple directions, forcing him to duck into a side laboratory. Inside, he found himself facing an elderly Vexari scientist. You are the one they seek, the scientist said calmly, studying Ta with eyes that seemed to see through his disguise. I need to leave, Ta said, clutching the container with the precious enzyme vials. Why risk everything to steal these? The scientist asked, gesturing to the container. To save my son. A Vexari child. You are not Vexari. Ta hesitated, then decided truth was his only option. I am human. The child is Vexari. Luminar lineage. He's dying from the wasting sickness. The scientist's eyes widened. Luminar. Impossible. That line was destroyed in the purges. One survived. I found him and raised him as my own. The facility shook again with another explosion. The scientist moved to a console and brought up security feeds showing Earth command forces engaging with Vexari ships in orbit. "They've come for you," the scientist observed. "Not for me. For him. For what they could learn from him." Taz's voice broke. "I can't let that happen." After a long moment, the scientist touched another control. A hidden door opened in the wall. "This leads to the emergency transport base, but you will never reach your ship in time." "I have to try." "Wait." The scientist moved to another chamber at the far end of the lab. "There is another option. The transformation you underwent, it can be made permanent." Taz stared at the chamber. "What do you mean?" "Full genetic integration. You would become neither human nor Vexari, but something between. Your body would produce the enzymes the child needs naturally." The scientist's gaze was intense. "But you can never return to human form, never return to your people." Security forces pounded on the laboratory door. Time was running out. Tai thought of Q, of the Earth he would never see again, of the future he was abandoning. Then he stepped toward the chamber. "Do it." When the security forces finally broke through, they found only the elderly scientist, who claimed to have seen nothing. The intruder had vanished. 2 weeks later, on the Progressive Faction's moon base, Q opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a face, familiar yet changed. Blue-tinged skin, enlarged eyes with silver flecks, but the same smile he knew. "Ta," Q whispered in the Vexari language. "It's me," Ta confirmed, his transformed hand gently touching Q's. Their empathic connection flowed stronger than ever before, no longer bridging different biologies, but flowing naturally between them. Outside the medical dome, representatives from both Vexari factions and Earth Command had gathered, drawn together by the unprecedented events. A human had sacrificed his very nature to save a Vexari child. It challenged everything both species believed about each other. As Ta walked out with Q beside him, silence fell over the assembled delegates. His transformed body produced the enzymes that had saved his son, but more importantly, his sacrifice had opened a door between worlds. "Perhaps," said the Vexari High Counselor, lowering his ceremonial staff, "we have something to learn from humans after all." Q took his father's hand, their matched empathic abilities creating ripples of understanding that spread through the gathered crowd. In that moment, compassion transcended biology, becoming the first step toward a new future for both species.